Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I am very honored to be interviewing a very special space champion, Miss Alyssa Carson. Miss Carson is an American space enthusiast and undergrad student. She is known for attending numerous space camps and visiting NASA visitor centers across 9 states with her father. In 2014, Miss Carson was the first person to complete the NASA Passport Program, visiting each of the NASA's 14 visitor centers across the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. In 2014, Miss Carson was also featured as the youngest female groundbreaker on the Steve Harvey talk show. She was also featured in the 2017 documentary, The Mars Generation. On top of all of that, Miss Carson self-published So You Want to Be an Astronaut, which is about her passion for spaceflight and has written for The Independent and always encourages young girls into STEAM. I'm so excited to be able to talk with Miss Carson about her journey on a deeper level. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to conduct this interview.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, before we get into understanding your journey and really what ignited your huge love for space, first I'd like to know more about your typical day. What do you currently do and how does it run?
Yeah, totally. I mean, my typical day is always changing. There really is no set path, but pretty much, I mean, as of right now, some of the different stuff that I'm working on or dealing with. Obviously, I'm still in school. We're getting towards the tail end of the semester now, which has been really nice. Although finals are like next week, so it's quite chaotic right now. But yeah, really trying to focus on my classes, focus on school. I also have some labs that I have been having to go in person for. Those have been really cool and a whole lot of fun. I also have an internship right now with a company called Jacobs, and that is dealing with their international space relations team. And so dealing with space agencies all over the world. And of course, just living my normal life, taking care of my dog, hanging out with my roommates a lot, and just kind of going on as well. But definitely it's been a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that you're still able to balance that regular, normal student life as well as getting so much done in the space industry. So it's really nice to hear. And so, what was your inspiration in finishing the NASA Passport Program? I'm sure a lot of people are very curious behind your motivation behind doing it. So, I'd love to hear what inspired you to do it.
Yeah, so when the NASA Passport program came out, I was typically up at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, which was one of the places on the passport, but that's where Space Camp was located. So we were up there very frequently. It pretty much Huntsville kind of just became our second home. We were there a whole lot. We were friends with so many people up there. So when the passport program came up, we were very interested in just seeing what it was about. We weren't necessarily planning on doing anything, but as kind of me and my dad were looking at the different places that were on it, we had already been planning almost like a family vacation. So I was planning on going to space camp in Laval, Canada, but we decided we were going to road trip up there instead of just going to space camp. So we're already planning on doing a whole East Coast of the US trip to be able to let me see major cities on the East Coast. I had never been on the East Coast at that point. So we had figured out that we were already going to be going near most of them. And so we decided to make a little road trip out of it, go and visit a lot of the different centers. And then kind of after that major trip, we only had a few out in California. And so it was relatively simple since it was kind of what we were already planning on doing. So
Yeah, that worked out perfect then. Yeah, and you were mentioning earlier how are also part of an internship and you work in labs, and so that's really interesting. So I'm curious, if you had to pick one, which of course is really hard, what is the most exciting project or research that you've worked on or are working on?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been so much amazing stuff that I've been able to be a part of. Definitely a lot of the different things that I've been able to do within Project Possum, which Project Possum is a citizen science research organization that I'm a part of. So we're a whole bunch of everyday people from all over the world that really, if we have free time, we get together to do really cool science and research campaigns. But definitely, probably my favorite thing has been our water survival training that we did. So we did 2 weeks. The first week was basic water survival. How would you live in a life raft? How would you, stay warm in the ocean, that sort of stuff. But the second week we connected it to space. So we were swimming in real spacesuits. We were pulling ourselves into life rafts and spacesuits. We had a fake capsule that we were learning how to escape from. So it's just a really cool experience because not only were we really connecting it to space, but I felt like we were also learning life skills. And it was really amazing just to kind of be a part of that team.
Yeah, how did you learn about all of these amazing initiatives and programs that are offered for younger students in the space industry? Was there like a lot of exploration involved, or did you have like a mentor to guide you? How did you figure, so many opportunities that were available to you?
Yeah, totally. So the route when I was younger, obviously I had the idea of like astronaut in my head, but an astronaut really isn't a job. You have to have something else that you want to do, some sort of job that you can go into to then apply as an astronaut. So, I was really, when I was young, trying to figure out what I would want to go into and then looking for opportunities that kind of related to that interest of mine. So that's kind of how I went about it. Really, all of the different things and opportunities I found have been totally random and just me seeking them out or even talking about my dreams. So Project Possum is a great example. It was such an amazing opportunity. I started when I was 15. I've been able to do so many amazing research campaigns, work with real spacesuits, work with professionals, and that was really amazing. And the reason why I joined Project Possum was just because I was at some random summer camp and I was saying how much I liked space and wanted to work in the industry one day. And actually, one of like the counselors who was in charge of us, which she was only just a college student, she wasn't anyone important. She pretty much just said, "Hey, I think there's this thing starting up at my university. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they do. I don't know if you can be a part of it, but maybe it's worth a phone call." And so that's how we ended up getting in touch with Project Possum, and that led to everything else. But it's definitely really, talking about your dreams and telling people what you're interested in doing, because you never know who someone else knows. You never know where the opportunities are going to come from. And so that's really what it's been, is seeking them out. And then also, yeah, just really talking about your dreams and seeing, what other people can offer you. I definitely think within the STEM industry, we are so good about this. We always want more people in STEM. So if you mention something, we will probably give you advice as to where to go next.
Yeah, I think that's really great because you're like a huge role model to a lot of children out there that age is definitely not a boundary. Like you can still not graduate college yet, or even high school really, and you can still do so much. And I think that type of role model setting is really good. And so I'm really glad that you were able to be this type of example for everyone that age is definitely not a boundary. And so, did you always imagine yourself in the position you are in today, or did you have some like twists and turns and some surprising moments that really allowed you to transform into who you are today?
Yeah, there's definitely been, I would definitely say, some twists and turns. Obviously, kind of like what I was saying when I was younger, I was interested in space. There's a lot of avenues to go down within space. You can pretty much study, if you want to be a pilot, if you want to study medicine, if you want to study literally any type of science or any type of space science, there's engineering, there's so many options. So kind of like figuring out what I wanted to do switched around a little bit. I always knew that I wanted to be more of like a science side of things, more of a scientist, not necessarily like a pilot. I did get my pilot's license. I love flying, just not necessarily professionally. I was definitely more interested in how like science applied to space rather than that side of things. So I had like a general theme, but kind of within that was always really figuring out what I wanted to do. Originally, I kind of knew I wouldn't really make it in engineering. I don't really have that like type of brain to like think about like building. So I was originally interested in like astrophysics. And I eventually ended up in astrobiology, which I absolutely love. I'm really happy where I ended up. So that was kind of, a few things twisting to kind of figure out what I wanted to go into and actually do. And then also at the same time, the whole, I think, science communicator side of my life was definitely something that I did not anticipate. It's not necessarily something that I wanted to do. I'm really, really glad it all happened, just because I have had such an amazing time being able to talk and inspire other girls and kids to go after their dreams. And that's been some of the best moments, is to be able to have that time with other young people. And so that's been really amazing, but definitely not something that I expected was going to happen.
Yeah, and you were mentioning how there's so many variety careers in the space industry, and really one of the reasons I started this series was to highlight those diverse careers. Because a few years ago, if you told me like space policy or space medicine or really any of that was a real career, I would have been a little surprised, because all I thought when I thought of space was associated associated it with engineering, nothing else. So I'm curious, how did you discover astrobiology, and is there like a specific avenue in astrobiology you're interested in pursuing further?
Yeah, totally. My thought process in space is that you can always get more specific and you can always break it down to another level. But you're totally right. There are so many jobs. Something that I also really like to tell kids is, even if you hate math and science, you can still work in the space industry. There are so many other components, but you're totally right. When we think of space, we jump to astronaut, scientist, and engineer, and that's it. Whereas, journalism, psychology, preparing the food for the astronauts, spacesuit designers, engine testers, all of those are just as important, because every part in the space industry plays such an important role. And really, the way I got into astrobiology, which astrobiology is a relatively newer section of space, but pretty much when I went to one of like the panels that I was speaking on, I had mentioned that I had an interest in astrophysics, and actually one of the other panelists was an astrobiologist. So afterwards, we had a little talk after the panel. She came up to me and she was like, "So why astrophysics? Like why that?" And we pretty much had a little chat, and she convinced me to look a lot more into astrobiology. But the reason why I've really kept up with it and really stuck with it is because astrobiology is kind of the broader spectrum. So you pretty much learn how all sciences apply to space, not necessarily just physics. And so I thought that was really interesting because you can decide, whatever you want to study in space, or if you want to change your mind later on, that's fine too. So technically I'm supposed to like choose an avenue like to go down, like either bio in space or physics in space or chem, but I'm kind of keeping it a little broad because I do love learning about them all. That's the fun part, is that you do learn about them all. I'll probably go more of a bio route. It's just what I've enjoyed the most so far. But yeah, definitely what I love is, once you're working professionally, if you want to study bacteria in space one day and look for aliens the next day, and then start studying, a moon of Jupiter the next, really your options are limitless as to what you want to do your research in. And I thought that was always really fascinating.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I was interviewing a few space medicine professionals and astrobiologists, and every one of their research was unique and different. I think that it speaks to how diverse the space industry is, not only in terms of career, but the research that's being conducted. I feel like every researcher, every scientist has a new goal or a new, item or thing to discover. So I think that's what everyone gets excited about space, because it's so unique and there's just so much to learn and do in it. So that's amazing. And so I also mentioned earlier that you are an author, so you self-published a book. And so I'm curious, could you share your motivation behind writing that book and how the process went for you?
Yeah, totally. So I wrote the book, So You Want to Be an Astronaut, really because being able to have some like sort of social media presence, I was able to really speak to kids from all over the world. And in that, I got to hear so many people from all over the world wanting to be astronauts and wanting to work in the space industry. And I totally sympathize because there's not an instruction manual. There's nothing that like tells you how to be an astronaut. There's not a to-do list. There's like nothing that you have to do. Of course, there's all the things that I did, but you don't have to do any of those things if you want to be an astronaut. You can totally make it without doing anything that I did. And so really I wanted to be able to have a guide for so many of these kids, because I was able to, message and talk to a lot of them and kind of be that person. But I always thought that like, if you were interested in being an astronaut, it was kind of like a personal journey that you had to take. You had to figure out what you were interested in doing, how you wanted to apply whatever it was to space, and then how you could seek opportunities regarding that specific topic. And I wanted to be able to have a guide where it could kind of take them through that journey while reading the book, and trying to, of course, use tidbits as to like what I experienced and what I went through, but really just trying to motivate them to follow whatever their dreams are. And so it was in hopes of trying to reach more kids and hopefully, give them a little bit of guidance, because really this is kind of a time where we're not really used to people having the idea of an astronaut from a young age. Yes, we've always had people, dream of being an astronaut when they're kids, but they never like worked towards it. They forgot about it. They later came back to it. Whereas like, of course I'm studying to be an astrobiologist, but I still have, astronaut in the back of my mind as something that I'm working towards. And so that's definitely something that's very new. And so I really wanted to give some guidance to that.
Yeah, that's so important. I'm so glad that you're able to write this book and to help other children out there. I feel like as a little kid, most every child has that like dream of, oh, what's beyond Earth? I want to be an astronaut. I want to explore, especially when you see all those really cool videos of astronauts that are already in space. But when you go to like middle school, especially high school, you tend to get deterred. You don't really think about space as a real career due to like the stereotypes that surround the industry, lack of information and awareness. And so, a book like yours, as well as different online platforms and resources, are so helpful to help educate these children. So that's a great reason and motivation behind writing the book. And I know a lot of people who read the book probably have a better idea of what works and what doesn't work based off of your own personal journey. So that's amazing. And so how early were your passions for space identified? Because you obviously, you were interested, you did the passport program for NASA, you had that keen interest. But was there a specific moment when you were young that really sparked your interest for space, or was this more of like ever since you were little kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much been ever since that I was little. Obviously, I don't have like amazing memory from when I was that young. My dad does remember me coming up and asking a lot of questions about space and Mars, and I knew absolutely nothing. Like, is space even real? But no one in my family really had any sort of space or science background, and so my dad pretty much tried to tell me a little bit about the missions to the moon, saying that it's possible we could go to Mars one day. Maybe he didn't know. But that kind of was what got me interested in wanting to ask for more books, videos, posters, really anything about space to be able to learn more. Looking back, our best guess as to what sparked that conversation is an episode of The Backyardigans, which was a cartoon I used to watch. We don't know
Yes.
for sure. It's really just the only place we can think of as to where I would have even heard the word Mars to start asking about it. So that's kind of what we stem it back to. Whether it was that or not, I don't know. But yeah, really ever since I started questioning, I was always seeking out for that information to try to learn more. And it started small and then slowly progressed. And once I had actually gone to space camp for the first time, which was when I was 7, is when I just like full on knew that it was something I wanted to do. It wasn't even necessarily astronaut. I was just like, yeah, I want to work in the space industry in some way. Just because at space camp I was able to learn all this information that I was like dying to know since I was little. And, being able to see life size rockets and build my own model rocket and ride simulators and play the role of an astronaut, I was pretty much like living my best fantasy. And so that's why, like, especially after space camp, I was pretty much told that space was what I was interested in.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like all little children get into space because of media. I feel like whether it be a book, a movie, a TV show, or some cartoon, I feel like that's what brings a lot of people into space, especially if your parents don't have that space or science background or information. So I've heard that response many times. So I'm glad that you were able to find that curiosity. And definitely, I feel like experiences like space camp, although a lot of people are doing more free programs in space now that space is starting to become more accessible. But having space camp, other educational opportunities. I know NASA has great programs like the Sisters program at the Goddard Center. That's what got me really into space when I was young. And so there's like all these amazing programs out there that really tell you that this is what I want to do. So I think encouraging students to go into that mentorship type of experience would be really cool. Yeah, and I'm curious about your journey, more of the obstacle side. I feel like, and when everyone sees you, they're always like, oh gosh, she accomplished so much at such a young age. But I'm sure there was a lot of hard work behind the scenes from your part, maybe even some obstacles. So, did you have obstacles when trying to go through your journey? And if so, how are you able to overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it was tough, trying to balance anything that I wanted to do space wise, of course, with school. I always knew that school was top priority in some way. I had to continue through school if this is what I wanted to do. So obviously just time management and balance of everything. And then also at the same time, I was pushing a lot in terms of like my age to do a lot of different things. I was always, pushing people to try to let me do different things relatively young. So that was definitely an obstacle to be able to even do these things. I mean, even within, joining Project Possum, it was very rare for me at 15 to be joining and doing stuff within Project Possum, but it was always trying to like sell myself or, prove that I was able to do something. So I would say like, oh, you guys are doing like decompression training. Well, I've scuba dived a couple times. Like that's kind of similar. And so I was definitely trying to connect anything that I had done to anything else to be able to kind of like push those limits. And some were successful, some weren't, and that's okay. But yeah, I think it was always just like also taking the time to like look out for those opportunities. And I think also it was trying to find that balance, because or really what was more important to me at the time, whether it was going after some sort of space thing or if it was staying and doing some school thing. It was always trying to figure out like what was more important to me at the time, or what we could do to maybe do both, or any sacrifices that were made in that way. So pretty much really just like a really busy childhood, I would say, just because there was a lot of travel involved, a lot of time management, especially with balancing classes along with everything else.
Yeah, yeah, that's completely understandable. I mean, you've been through so many programs, you've done a lot of like outreach and engagement with the public in order to inspire younger children. So I definitely can understand where like the school balance and, actually doing what you do outside with, science communication, being able to balance that is definitely a skill. So I'm glad that you're still able to do both continuously without, sacrificing anything on both sides. So that's amazing that you're able to find that skill of time management. And so, you mentioned Project Possum many times. And so, was there like a mentorship, maybe apart from that, or like a internship role or summer program that really helped you gain a lot of information that you recommend other students, maybe in college or high school to, or middle school even, to get involved?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that, luckily, I think Project Possum is an amazing program as an amazing resource. When I joined, everyone else was like in their 30s and like well-defined adults. Definitely since I've joined the program, I've worked with them a lot on allowing like more 18-year-olds to join the program. And so I do think that like if you're interested in the research that they're doing, once you get to 18 and like are ready to apply, I think that is an amazing opportunity, even just learning about some of their classes, even if it's not the field work. But also, I think really just now with how much information we have online and how popular space is, there really are so many resources to just go out and learn more. And I do think that that's really the first step. Once you figure out the area of space you want to go into, it's, you want to learn as much as you can about that area, whether it's, for me, looking for internships in astrobiology or looking for other programs that are doing research. But I do think that there really is a lot within space, and especially different areas of space. So, for example, like something that I want to do coming up is some sort of analog research. So there's several different ones in different places. So I'm trying to figure out, which one I would want to do. So pretty much analog is like simulating, a space mission, and you're pretending to be an astronaut. And so I think I'm going to end up doing like an at sea one, which is going to be really intense. But definitely, just trying to figure out, what works best for you or what kind of research you really are interested in. And then also, some of those like little skills that you may not even think applies, which was something really helpful when I was younger, like scuba diving, which you can start really, really young, was an amazing skill because it may not seem like it, but it does connect to space in a lot of ways. You're learning, you have your own oxygen, you're in an environment that isn't really the best conditions ever. You're learning how to work with a buddy without much communication. And so also underwater is just kind of the closest thing we have to long-term microgravity. But a lot of those little things that you can start young can definitely start building a few of those skills that you can use later on.
Yeah, I think, especially for a lot of like high school students, I feel like there's not like a certain path, especially into the space industry or to become an astronaut, like you were mentioning earlier. But being able to find to see if this is what you want to do through those summer experiences you were talking about, as well as like, maybe trying a few skills and be like, oh, this is something that I would enjoy exploring further. I think just being able to have those experiences is really valuable. So I think, those some of the programs you were mentioning, that's great. And also there's so many like social media platforms these days that are so helpful, like Clubhouse. I think it's a big one these days, where there's just so many, like every like 5 minutes I feel like there's a new space discussion happening. And it's just there's so many amazing resources outside that every one of us have access to in this digital age. So that's something that we should be very grateful for. So yeah. And so I'm curious for you. You're a student, you do so much outside. So how do you manage to keep your skills current in the space industry, as well as find time to, understand the rapid changes in the space industry?
Yeah, definitely I try to do as much as I can in a day. Pretty much my calendar is like my best friend. Like everything just like goes in there and I try to figure out what I have to do for the day. But like you said, just trying to stay updated with what's happening in space. And it's been amazing that some of that stuff does relate. So I mean, for example, my internship, typically I like to put in around 10 hours a week for that. But I have people on my team that, we talk about what's happening recently. The interesting part about the internship that I currently have is it's a lot of like the political side of space. And so we're definitely talking, about what's happening in the space industry, what changes are happening. And it's not even like it's political, like worldwide. How does the UK government right now relate to their space program in terms of like how that connects to ESA? And it's very intense to learn about. I get overwhelmed with it all the time. That's definitely not my strong point in space, so I'm trying to like pick up, but that's been a really great place for me to try to stay updated in what's happening. And so that's been really cool too, because it's not only what's happening right now, but it's also what's happening around the world. So it's like sometimes I'll get an email like, hey Alyssa, can you figure out what's happening in Poland right now with space? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess let me go find out what the Polish Space Agency is up to or what they've been working on. So that's been really, really great for keeping me up to date. But you're totally right. There's so much happening in space, even this year. A lot of really amazing advancements are coming. A lot of launches, a lot of a lot of new telescopes, new satellites, new this, new that. So it's definitely a lot to keep up with. So I think also talking about space and having that science communicator side is also helpful, because I'll have kids like, oh, do you know about this? And I'm like, no, but like you can tell me about it. And so I think sometimes kids like to keep me on my toes too.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that's a great response because not only is your internship helping you, and definitely what you were saying about the foreign affairs thing, I really feel that space policy is like a huge plays a major role in the space industry. I mean, a lot of space agencies that started is because of for political reasons, more than we like to say that or not. And so being able to keep up with what's happening, potential collaborations between government agencies, which I highly doubt will happen, but if it does, that would be really cool. And just being able to see what's happening, what are the views of the different space agencies, I think that's really amazing. And keeping on your toes because of this engagements and different research, reading different books. Again, social media is a big way to keep updated. So yeah, glad you're able to find that time. And so now that you were able to talk a little bit about your research as well as your journey and what really got you into space, like Space Camp, I'm sure you have a lot of advice you'd love to give to young astronauts, aspiring astronauts, as well as students who want to go into the space industry. So my last question for you is, what advice do you have for young people regarding their pursuit of a passion in the space field, STEM industry, really any field, a career they want to go into, something that you wish you knew when you're already young, but something you wish you knew when you were like middle school?
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely encourage, even though you are, let's say, in middle school, in high school, in those places, when you're at that point, nothing is really pushing you to figure out what you want to do. No one's telling you you have to choose right now, and that's totally okay because you have time to decide. But if you do kind of start looking and figuring out what you want to do, that's totally okay too. We all kind of figure it out at different times, but definitely be encouraged to look into some of the non-traditional jobs, whether it is within the space and STEM industry or not. I definitely think that when we're young and in school, we get told a lot of the same: doctor, teacher, lawyer. They're all great, but there's definitely a whole lot more out there, especially now where even within, space, there's so much more happening. So there's so many more jobs even coming up in the next few years that we don't even know of yet. So kind of definitely be encouraged to keep up with some of these newer non-traditional jobs, even, stuff like travel blogging and stuff that we don't really talk about as much. Those can be super fun if that's what you're interested in. And then I would also encourage to try to see how you can like mix your disciplines. I think that the thing as when you're going after something or something, a job that you want to do, it's important to be passionate about it. And so I think that if we're able to like mix different things that we like, we're going to find something that we're actually really passionate about. So if you really like fashion, but also like space, make designer spacesuits. I don't know, it can be a thing. And so, try to figure out how you can mix those, or maybe there is a job that already does mixes them and maybe we just don't really talk about it as much. So definitely try to mix your interests. And then once you kind of figure out what you want to do, always go back to trying to look for any sort of opportunities. And I definitely think people get slightly intimidated when you say opportunities. They really don't have to be that big. Honestly, joining a club at school it can definitely get you started, and it can help you figuring out if that's what you want to do, or do you actually like that, or do you like something else? And taking advantage of those little things can make a huge difference in your local area. And then again, going back to talking about your dreams, because I think that is definitely one of the biggest things, if not the biggest, but just being able to tell people what you're interested in doing is so huge. You never know who somebody else knows, you never know where it can lead. So always talk about your dreams. And if you're afraid to do that, kind of think about what you're talking about. When I was young, I was saying I want to be an astronaut, go to Mars. I don't know about you guys, but that's like the craziest thing. Any kid could just start telling people and telling it with such confidence, I guess. And so definitely, if you are interested in something, there are going to be people that can help you. So be encouraged to kind of tell people about it and even teach others. That was my biggest thing. If someone would tell me like, oh, there aren't astronauts anymore, like, what are you talking about? I took a lot of those moments to try to teach others what was happening in space because I saw that disconnect. So, if you're able to teach that, then you're just being able to share your passion. And that probably is a good sign that you're going after the right thing.
Yeah, that is 100%. You literally encapsulated exactly what my interview series is all about. In last year, if I didn't randomly put two words together that I liked, like space and medicine, I would not have realized that was a real career. And, just like trying to combine two or three interests, or maybe even more interests together and finding your own discipline, finding your own career. I mean, there's so many opportunities. You don't have to be going in like one path that everybody else is going in, but just be creative and follow your passion. And also find that supportive network and don't be afraid to share your dreams, like you're saying, are such important pieces of advice. And I know this is going to help a lot of students out there, whether they want to go into the space industry or really any industry at all. So I want to thank you so much, Ms. Carson, for taking some time out of your really busy schedule to do this interview. It was a huge honor being able to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.